So first of all, welcome to the first WeAreTechNetworks meeting of the year. Very timely, as obviously we've had our report, so we thought that we would focus on that, but also very happy to be joined by some of our corporate members as well today. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through kind of that report. We've also got Sue Phillips going to run us through that from Ipsos Mori, who's one of our partners on the Barriers to Tech report. And then we've also got Debbie Forster MBE with us, who's CEO of the Tech Talent Charter, just to give you some broader kind of observations. Now, Debbie can tell you about the Tech Talent Charter because you should all be signatories anyway, so we can find out a little bit more about that. Then I'm going to give you a little bit of from my thinking, areas where I think you should focus. And then we're going to put you into some breakout rooms where you can talk about some of those topics. Really what I'm looking for is companies to grab hold of one particular aspect of that report and run with it. So whether it's male allyship, what we're going to do about that and building initiatives around male allyship, or it could be sponsorship, or it could be career pathways. But just to grab hold of one of those recommendations, say, okay, we think realistically we can do something about this one. Because what I'd really love to do in about 8 weeks' time is to bring us all back together and kind of try to share some best practice amongst the group. Around what we can do. Now, all of us are obviously on the hunt for that talent, but we're also very, very keen to retain the talent that we've got. So this is looking at the talent attraction, retention and development, so all in that space. So I'm just going to share my slides just quickly, and then I'll hand over to Sue. So bear with me. Can you, I take it you can all see them? Sue or Debbie, give me a nod. So this is basically just what we're going to cover, and obviously who that we have in the sessions. And I'll get my lovely ladies to introduce themselves. Who should be in the room? These are the individuals that kind of committed to coming along, so hopefully some of them are there. If not, they'll be watching on pre-record, and as I say, I'll try and get you back together in about 8 weeks. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to the fantastic Sue Phillips, who's worked for us from inception on this report. When I first kind of had that idea, I really want to do a report, and Ipsos Mori kindly enabled us to do that. So Sue, I'm going to stop sharing. You can share your slides, and away you go.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. So my name is Sue Phillips, and you'll see here from my background, I actually lead the Gender Balance Network at Ipsos, as well as doing research. So I'm very passionate about the topic that we're going to be talking about today. So yes, I'm going to be sharing with you the key insights from the report. Not every single finding from the report, but we're focusing on the key things that came out. But I'll also start off by talking with you a little bit about why we should care, because that's one of the things that we need to be talking with our colleagues and teams around in order to actually get them to support and work with us in order to move things forward. So let's start with a quote from the one of the people we spoke to. This is what she said. She said, "I think there is bias, conscious or unconscious, which is a really big thing we need to tackle. If you are looking for 10 people to sit on a promotion committee and you're 80% male, it's easy to go and find 8 men and 2 women. But what you need to do is find 5 women and 5 men. Reducing that unconscious bias is the first thing that needs to be done." So it's really highlighting what the challenge is in the environment that we have. And we know that tech struggles to attract and retain women. So we know that from research that Vanessa has shared with you before, that 15% of women are working in tech. We've done some of our own work among cybersecurity and among AI teams. And again, very low proportions compared with industry averages, certainly, of percentages of women working in tech. But one of the arguments we always put forward is the challenge that basically we know that achieving gender balance is not a zero-sum game. This piece of work by Christine Lagarde said that countries ranked in the bottom 50% for gender equality could actually boost their GDP by 35% if they close the gender gap. And then actually they will have greater retention of employees, and then they'll have a greater satisfaction among those leaders who actually want to have greater retention of employees. The other piece of work that came out recently, which I think is a great piece of work from Harvard Business Review, says that when women leave, leaders leave, the losses multiply. So essentially your companies face a 15-year high talent shortages at the moment. So retaining and promoting more women leaders is the best and most urgent solution for securing one's entire workforce. So even if you only have a low percentage of women, actually the role they play, particularly in leadership, is probably disproportionate to the numbers of people you have there. And then the other, again, argument why we should care is that gender diverse groups do make better decisions. So we know from Massachusetts Institute of Technology work that on collective intelligence, which is the ability of a team to come up with better ideas than the smartest individual in that team, or when you're working with teams who are conversational turn takers, who are digesters, who understand and empathize, and therefore also those teams that have a higher percentage of women among them, because women actually tend to have a greater skill set in those two areas. So there are plenty of reasons why we should care, and we should be moving forward with the percentage of women working in our organizations. So the research was done in partnership with We Are Tech Women and the Tech Talent Charter. And this is a broad overview of what we did in the middle of last year, towards the end of last year. We did quantitative research with 363 women aged 18 to 64. And we interviewed, had some nice 30, 40-minute interviews, qualitatively having just some conversations with people, and you'll see their thoughts and ideas and their stories shared throughout the report. Just to give you a sense of the balance there, we had most of the women were between 30 and 49. 1 in 5 was under 30. They were predominantly white, 80% based in the UK, and nearly half had children under the age of 10. And in terms of their role, most were working full-time in mid-level or senior managerial positions across a mix of industries, including IT, telecoms, and finance. So just that you know the kind of people who are responding here. So why do people join a particular organization? So we know the power of technology, including its innovation potential and what it enables, are the key attractions for women. Women are inspired by the multiple opportunities a career in tech can offer. So why do they choose to join a particular organization? Well, 84% say because salaries are good, 83% because of the supportive manager, 76% are looking for an inclusive culture. And actually the fourth main driver, which is not mentioned here, is flexible or part-time working. So 68% said flexible or part-time working was a key reason for working where they are joining the organization they joined. And actually 1 in 5 say that's their main driver of choice. So actually we are looking for creating a flexible environment, and that's what people are looking for. Women also do appreciate the advantages that they bring. So they see the environment they're working in, they acknowledge that it's a male-dominated environment, and then they see the contribution that they make. We are often able to cross boundaries that men sometimes can't. Sometimes we don't carry the same level of ego. And I look to where we can all succeed. It's not an I problem, it's a we problem. But 1 in 5 women are actually thinking of leaving their current role. They're not happy. So when it comes to their current role, just under half of those surveyed reported feeling happy, while another third are not entirely happy. And as I said, 1 in 5 are thinking of leaving their role. But most of them are actually intending to remain in a tech role or in the tech sector. So they're just not staying in their current role because they've been attracted to the company, but they're not necessarily being retained. And although this number is in line with the great resignation that many companies are seeing at the moment, it's not great if you only have 15% of your employees as women to start with. So over half of women feel their gender limits their career in tech. And over half say that the workplace is not supportive of women, nor is it empowering them to succeed. So there is an element of visibility here. There's lots of research that says you need to see it to be it. And I think every talk on how to improve gender and gender diversity, I went to one yesterday, said that role modeling and visibility is absolutely key. And the other thing is always being the minority means you need to broaden your shoulders to carry the weight of being the only woman or the only Black person in the room. And this requires real confidence. And one of the women I spoke to shared how when women were going for promotion, there was the sense that they had to prove their capabilities to deliver in the role before they got there. Whereas for men, their potential was often taken more into account. Sorry, I'm just trying to move the next slide. There we are. So the three main barriers. So let's focus on three main barriers, if overcome, could have a material impact on gender balance in tech. So if we can focus on these, we might be able to increase those retention rates and enable companies to bring out the best in the women they have on their tech teams. So these three areas are a clear path to career progression, sponsorship or lack thereof at the moment is the barrier, and looking for more male allyship. So let's start with career progression. So currently, overall, 2/3 of women feel frustrated and anxious about their career advancements. And these are the main reasons why. So they don't see they have promotion opportunities, there's a lack of confidence, lack of senior support role models. I talked about that earlier on, difficulty balancing work and other responsibilities, and some challenges around sexism and gender bias. And again, I will talk a little bit more about that later. So let's look at those two biggest challenges in a bit more detail here. So 38% say it's a lack of promotion opportunities. So this person here was saying her progression was not always that easy when she was pregnant. She vividly remembered putting herself forward for a long-term, high-profile project. Initially, I was refused because of skepticism about my ability to perform on this high-pressure job, given the change in my circumstances. I raised this with my line manager, who fully supported me and got me onto the project. So there's this inherent bias of, you know, somebody is pregnant, they therefore fall into another camp of capability. This woman certainly wasn't in that camp of incapability, but had to push it. And it was thanks to her progressive thinking boss that she was able to keep the role. But a challenge nonetheless in getting promoted. 35% also said that they lacked confidence. So sometimes it's acknowledged that we don't help ourselves. Again, there is a lot of research on the tendency for women to underclaim and men to overclaim their abilities. Some might say that there is a middle level of realism there, and who would you rather hire? But if managers are aware of this tendency, they can ask the questions which will bring out the best, identify highlights of a woman's experience rather than just assuming she doesn't have any. And Vanessa will talk a little bit more about this later as well. So on to sponsorship. So that's something of a mystery to many of the women we spoke to. They know it exists, but not apparently for women. And it was amazing how often it came up spontaneously in our conversations with women. But no one is looking for special favors here. They just want to know, they just want access to something that they know exists. So how do I get it too? Over 2/3 think that access to mentoring or sponsorship is important to attracting them to an organization. So they know that it's something that would help them. So if you're looking to attract more women, having sponsorship would certainly help. Just about half are aware of sponsorship. And among those who are aware, only 18% have actually used it. And actually only 8% of all people in our sample are currently involved in a sponsorship initiative. So clearly more could be done there. And you can see from this person's experience here, when an organization does it, there's a real payback. So Bank has had a sponsorship program. It's been amazing for me. Women may not be looking for that sponsorship or waiting for that connection. So that's something that needs to be really, really pushed. And so here's some ideas that the women were sharing with us. Well, what can you do? What could organizations do to increase sponsorship? So raise awareness and understanding of how it works, provide clarity of how to obtain it, showcase the successful sponsorship relationships, so the bright spots and championing those, and then making it more widely available. So it's really making much more of those sponsorship opportunities and programs if you have them. And then thirdly, male allyship. So only 19% see all or most men as allies. So what is a male ally? I think most of you are probably aware of this, but it's a man who actively supports gender equality, for example, through their behavior towards women, their support of women, their hiring, training, and promotion and decision-making of women. So 85% of women who see men as allies say giving credit for achievements is the best way to demonstrate allyship. Also, offering similar training opportunities, general opportunities and responsibilities given to women, providing flexibility for those with caring duties, and fostering a positive environment where women can thrive, generally the most commonly reported ways in which men can be allies. Again, a great quote here. If he hadn't supported me to move from India to the UK alone and to do the executive MBA I'm doing now alongside my career, I wouldn't have been able to do any of it. So again, an example here of how a male ally has really helped this person's career progress. So examples of this behavior are basically, 75% say at least some men within their organizations are not allies. And so there are men who claim to be great supporters and champions, and then they'll say something which gives them away. So I think sexism tends to be a little more subtle than it perhaps was, but it still absolutely exists. So examples of this behavior, again, won't be surprised to many people on this call, are men taking over or not listening to women in meetings, taking women's ideas, etc. And 2/3 of women said they had experienced this. So this is widespread. It does happen daily. Over half of men report men not calling out inappropriate behavior towards women, or even actively acting inappropriately themselves. So there's still some of the more obvious things happening, but I think the bigger things are perhaps more subtle, as this quote highlights here. So finally, where are the opportunities to address some of the barriers? The report has a number, and we're going to hopefully brainstorm some of those in the breakout groups as well. To start with, the career progression challenge, the greater consistency in the way performance is captured and shared would be a benefit. For sponsorship and mentoring, make people aware and make those programs that you have available, more broadly available. And finally, encourage allyship by demonstrating to people what allyship actually is and what good looks like. Many thanks for listening, and please feel free to share any questions. I have the report here with me, so looking forward to hearing from you too. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Sue. Some great observations of our report and some, initial findings to really give us some food for thought. But I'm interested in your observations, Debbie. Obviously, you see this from a much bigger picture perspective at Tech Talent Charter. So tell us a little bit about Tech Talent Charter, but then tell us what you think about the report.
Super. My name's Debbie. I run something called the Tech Talent Charter. Now, a few of you on the call, whether you know it or not, can smile smugly because your companies are already signatories. We have about 700 signatories. This is a not-for-profit that brings together organizations from across the sector who have a vested interest in making tech more inclusive and diverse. So We Are the City is a signatory, so is EY, so is HSBC, so is Domino's Pizza, so is Cancer Research UK. We bring together any organization that wants to do this. This is companies doing this, yes, because of social justice, but more importantly, and I think this is something for us to always remember in the back of our heads, a huge business need. When we look at inclusion and diversity, when we look at retaining and growing women into tech roles, senior tech roles, this is not just the right thing to do. And I used to always say it's the smart thing to do. It's now a stupid thing not to do. With the Great Resignation, companies are waking up and realizing the business case is here. So they have to find out, how can they recruit, how can they retain, how can they grow those underrepresented groups to fill that huge, gaping, growing role in tech, the talent shortage. So in looking at this, what we will do, our signatories share data with us, and our data absolutely correlates with this report, which is why we were so keen to do it. So whereas this survey talks about it from the women's lens about what they see, it resonates what we have with tech. Now, I get to work with the good news tech. When people come to my events, I joke about I don't make no apologies on preaching to the choir. This is where the choir come to figure out how to be better singers. So if we look at now within our signatories, we represent about 16% of the entire tech workforce in the UK. And if I look at the stats, our stats are better than the national stats, because within our signatories, the gender breakdown is about 27%. So we're nearing that 30% piece. However, when I asked my partners in the latest report that we did to name their biggest problems in this space, number 2 was getting underrepresented groups into senior roles. So the retention and growth piece is a universal. And so when we look at this report and hear that even of that, those women who are in tech, 1 in 5 are thinking about moving on to another role, that sends shockwaves through our employers, and they're looking at how to do that. Now, I have shared a link in the chat to our report, so you can have a look at that of the various stats. And one of the things that you might find most useful is the benchmarking. So you can take your company's stats and see, according to your sector and size, where you measure up on gender, ethnicity. You can also see some strategies. And so this is where the two align. You'll look, I'll put a link after I'm through talking. We had our festival just a few weeks ago. One whole session was dedicated to looking at how do we retain and how do we grow women in tech, underrepresented groups in tech. So the sorts of strategies that were coming through were absolutely what we say here. You've got to get the salary right. You've got to get the structures right. You've got to get career progression right. Now, what I'd add to what we see within this report is when we looked at the 10 most frequently cited impactful interventions by our most gender diverse tech employers. All right, so this is really important to remember. So the ones that are the best in the stats and what they said was most impactful. So if we talked about how do we remove bias, how do we make sure that our careers are clearer and more clarified, I'd put up against that there are targets, measurement, and KPI, where employers and managers, hiring managers, middle managers are held accountable for those choices. So it's important to look at how are we training and supporting people to remove bias, but how are we auditing our systems, gathering the data to make sure that bias is not there. We talk about where it is also about gathering employees' feedback to measure inclusion, not just diversity. And our employers who are asking the questions of their members are hearing the things that we see in this report. And so they're moving on that drive about thinking about how are we getting better at creating career progression? How are we moving from that rather light touch mentoring into those champions and looking at that sponsorship piece? We're looking at how are we ensuring that our workplace is genuinely flexible? And we get some interesting insights. There's something I was talking to one of our companies, one of the big four. She was saying something interesting on their inclusion piece. When they're asking their signature, when they're asking their employees, women are too generous. What they got in some of the feedback is where women are being given flexibility to balance family commitments with work commitments, they're so grateful they're not raising complaints on other issues. Now that's interesting, that's useful, and it's something we need to remind employers. As COVID broke a lot of those barriers on flexible working, as more employers are getting flexibility built in as at a hygiene level for companies, people are going to start asking more. So I'm happy to hear answers, but I think that the thing to remember for companies, it is about what Vanessa was saying. It's about sharing best practice. And, Vanessa, I would ask anything that comes back from shared practice, we'd love to put that in our open playbook, crediting you and your group for putting that together. I think the important thing to remember in all of this is what you're doing here. It's bringing companies and employers and individuals together to stop reinventing the wheel, but to learn from each other, to work together in that respect, to drive these programs forward. So the companies that do it, I can point to them in my members. They are moving ahead. They are attracting, they are getting women like you on board, and they are keeping you and growing you into seniors. And those that don't are moving on. Back to you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Debbie. And again, most of you are Tech Talent Charter members, but do kind of, sign up, do look at that open playbook, because we'll only move the needle forward if we collectively work together. So just some extra bits for me before I put you into your breakout rooms. And again, there's not as many of you on this call as I would have liked, but I know it was difficult for some to join. But just some areas of focus for me, and it plays to some of what Debbie said and what Sue said as well. But what is the size of your problem, and where are your problems? Is it around attraction? When you look at the candidates you get, in which case do we need to look at your front door, e.g. your recruitment? Are there biases in there that we need to unpick? Are we pushing back on recruiters when we get slates that all look the same? So where are they hunting for talent? Are they, just being, no disrespect to recruiters, but are they being a little bit lazy and just going onto LinkedIn? Or are they hanging out with some of the women in tech networks where the talent where the talent is. So first of all, looking at your data, and again, thinking from the get-go, how are we going to measure success? Because what gets measured gets done. It's as simple as that, and that plays to kind of Debbie's points. Retention strategies. If you think of that stat, 1 in 5 women are thinking of leaving. If you look at an industry that's only, as I say, depending on what report you want to read, but between 15 and 17% of women that are represented, that is a detrimental impact to the number of women in tech. So you want to think about how do you hold on to the women that you've got? What development are you putting in place? What sponsorship programs? And again, I'm going to come on to some of the things. How are you raising their profile? Where are you giving them opportunities to kind of do more, say more, and be more? So think about the women that you've got, because it's all well and good going out and getting loads of women to join the organisation, but if you can't retain them, kind of what's the point? You're in that vicious circle. We spoke about sponsorship, and this is something that's come up time and time again. And for those of you that know me, something that I've been banging on about for the best part of 6 years. Above mentorship. Mentorship is obviously there. It plays a good role. It has a purpose and a place, but the sponsorship is what moves women forward. Having women taken under the wings of a senior leader, be it male, be it female, and having them open up their network, showing them what it looks like to work at their level, giving them shadowing opportunities, vocalizing their achievements in rooms that they're not in. We need more of that. So thinking about how you put in sponsorship programs, and again, I can help you kind of with some of ideas for that. And it's something that we're looking at, putting a program together at We Are Tech Women to help companies to achieve that. Male allies, we've seen the stats in the infographic, we've seen the stats in the report. Women don't think that men are always allies to them. Examples of sexism being spoken over to. How do we get men to recognize what that looks like? What does good look like, but also what does bad look like? So thinking about male allies, and sometimes, I've done focus groups with large groups of men, and they want to help, right? Invariably, they want to help, and they want to move this conversation forward, but they don't always know what actions to take in order to do that. And there's no reflection on their intelligence, but it's a bit of an unsure place for a man to be sometimes, when everything is so vocalized. What is right, what is wrong, what's seen as too much, what will the perception be, and all sorts of, again, in Chatham House, I've heard all sorts of worries that they have around kind of sticking their neck out to help particular women and stuff like that. But we need them to do it, and we need them also to demonstrate that behavior in environments where other men look and go, this is the right thing to do. So how do we work with our male allies? How do we tell them what that good stuff looks like? The second thing that's come up, and it's not only come up in this report, it's come up in all the different conversations that I've had with leaders for One Tech World, which a number of you are coming to, which runs on the next Friday, but is around listening, creating listening groups. It's pointless us sitting in our ivory towers thinking about how we address some of this stuff unless we go down to a grassroots level and actually have the conversations. What is going on? We've got this report, which is a great foundation for you to kickstart these conversations with your women in tech, but which part of that report is fundamentally holding you back, and what can we do about it? Because more often the greatest solutions come from the people that are in the fire. So where are you creating listening groups? Whether that's a Women Tech ERG, whether it's focus groups, whether it's back in my day, we used to call them skip levels, where we have senior leaders just having a lunch with like 10 women, talking about their careers, talking about their frustrations. Please don't underestimate the value of that listening, and the value of women actually know that there is something going on in the company where they're being heard, but moreover, that you go and do something about it, and enough talking shops, let's actually move to action. Other things, storytelling, and again, it came up through the report, lack of role models, lack of stories. You all have intranets. We do this all day, every day at We Are Tech Women. We tell our clients stories. There's nothing to stop you doing the same. It's a set of questions. That way you raise the profile of the woman in the organization. She gets a chance to share her nuggets of wisdom. She becomes a role model, and other women feel more comfortable then about telling their own stories. So where can you kind of create that storytelling through not only your own internal comms, but externally? Again, we get approached to tell women's stories. We do it through conferences. We do it through various different channels, podcasts. There is nothing to stop you guys doing this internally as well. So how do you showcase your role models? Now, the old fear was, oh my God, if we put them out there, someone will steal them. Well, if you're looking after them, that won't be the case. So that's what I've got to say on that one. Other things, pathways for promotion. It is unclear. Even back in my day, I mean, bear in mind, I was in tech for 25 years, 9 different banks. I still didn't know how I got to the next level. It was purely by opportunity, sponsorship, putting my hand up for things that no one else really wanted to do. But those opportunities are not always there for everyone. So how do we make it clear that, okay, firstly, careers are not linear, right? You may want to move sideways into a role because the ladder is bigger or it gives you more global experience. How do we do that? How do we create those clear pathways for promotion? And then how do we track that that's actually working? And that goes back to Debbie's KPIs, metrics, measurement. And finally, tackling gender bias. It exists. You know, we've just come out on the back of International Women's Day. For us, we did a campaign of 100 different ways to tackle bias. And, you know, it's stuff that makes your tails curl. We shouldn't be talking about this in 2022. But sometimes it's pointing out to people just those little microaggressions that are used in rooms, just that element of bias that just crops up in things we've always said or things that we've always done. So how do we take a deeper look at bias in the organisation, bias that surfaces as a consequence of hiring, as a consequence of promotions? It's there, it's in your processes. And the only way to eliminate it is to go back to basics and take each process one by one and look at it with a biased lens. So again, other things you can do. So just more practical, tangible things that some of you may want to wish to think about. So let's discuss. And as I say, ideally, I would love you, and for those of you watching the recording, and I will follow up by email, to think about how we can work on some of this stuff. Who's doing some great work in these areas? So for me, it boils down to data, retention, sponsorship, male allergies, not male allergies, male allies, ERGs, focus groups. That one's going on a blooper reel. Storytelling, role models, pathways for promotion, tackling gender bias. So as Leona puts a couple of you into rooms, I'd like you to kind of look at one of those and think which one that you'd like to discuss. And maybe you want to discuss all of them. And this would be great because as you come back, I'm going to ask you kind of what you discussed. But what are you already doing? And what do you think you could do? And, you know, I want you to think blue sky. Don't think about the barriers that might stop you getting there. I want you to think about the best possible outcome. And then we'll work our way back in terms of how we can potentially help you achieve it. Is that okay? Everyone good with that? So I'm going to ask my team to put you in rooms. I'm only going to leave you there for around 10 minutes and then we'll pull back. And then that way we should be able to wrap this up in an hour and I can give you some time back. So just 10 minutes to discuss, introduce yourself. Part of this exercise is for you to meet other people trying to solve the same problem as well. Introduce yourself, who you are, what you're currently working on, what area of the business that you represent, you know, where your interest is within women in tech. And then let's talk about some of these. I'll put them in the chat group so you don't have to go, what did Vanessa have on that slide? But I'll put you into the rooms now and I look forward to seeing you again in a sec. So what we're going to do, we're just going to get representatives from each room to kind of talk about it. We had a great conversation in ours. So I think, have I got her back? I want to go to Leanne. So we had Leanne, and in the room we had Catherine from Credit Suisse and Bridie from Hitachi Vantara. So Leanne, do you want to talk about what we discussed in our room?
Sure. I'm Leanne Lawton. I'm one of the engagement leads in wholesale digital for HSBC, which, you know, we're huge and we've got massive tech presence across the globe. So it's definitely stuff that's at the forefront of our mind, and there's a lot of work being done already, particularly in the gender space, gender parity, getting women into those senior roles. We spoke a bit in the group around sponsorship and mentoring, but one of the free resources that I sort of shared with Bridie and Catherine was Google's I Am Remarkable workshops. If you haven't used it, a few people nodding, some not, just a quick snapshot for you. So we've used these. Google designed and developed workshops that are about 90 minutes long that you can host to groups of about 10 to 12 individuals. Doesn't have to be women, it's any underrepresented group. So we've done them to women, we've done them to leadership teams, we've done them to graduates, we've done them to Black employees, whatever. The training is free. The training is done by Google, so they will train you and give you the material, which is proprietary. You can't make any changes, but you then set the sessions up and run them. They're all designed around empowerment, really, getting those individuals to be able to speak up about their achievements in the workplace, giving them practical tools and tips as to how they can have those conversations, particularly if they're working in a culture where it's not easy to speak up about your achievements or you don't necessarily have the opportunity. So we started that with just about 9 or 10 of us in the UK running that as facilitators, but because it was really popular and we've got a big population, we've now got over 20 UK-based facilitators, we've got over 20 India-based facilitators, we've got them in Hong Kong and in China. We speak different languages, we can deliver it in all kinds of stuff. But that's a free resource, so go and have a look. If you just Google #IamRemarkable, the Google page will pop up. There's a really lovely 2-minute video on there that kind of shows the experiences of some of the women that have done the workshop. But you can also sign up, like I say, to be a facilitator. You have to be a bit persistent. If you sign up to be on one of their training modules, if you like, A, it might say there are no dates available, or B, it'll say that the dates are like 6 months ahead. But check back regularly because they often put more sessions on. We actually reached out to them directly because at one point we had a group of about 14 individuals that wanted to be trained. So we reached out to Google directly and they set us up our own training session because I think you needed, I think it was 14 or 18 people. So there's that kind of option as well. But that was one thing that we've done hundreds of those workshops now, and it's just a lovely, feel good, interactive way to spend 90 minutes that really helps people to feel like, actually, do you know what? I've done some really awesome stuff in my life. I should not be holding myself back. I have a lot that I can bring to the table. So that's just a nice free resource that I wanted to kind of share with you guys.
Thank you. And I've put the link to that in the chat. I've actually spoken somewhere where somebody's delivered that workshop after me and I stayed around to watch it, and it is really good. So yeah, definitely one to look at. Right, so who wants to talk to me what went on in one of the other rooms? So anybody?
I mean, yeah, I'll talk. We had lots of conversation, but I think the kind of key thing was really around data. I think no matter what, we have wonderful, I mean, everyone seems to have lots of stuff going on, which is fab within, kind of supporting women. But until we can sort of see the data, and know what metrics we're trying to, what are those metrics, right? And not just, have organized women in tech network. These are all really important, right? And events and things like that, but actually show us exactly how many SVPs, how many VPs, and what's your target. So, and literally track year on year. So I was just saying, I'm kind of fortunate in my new role that one of the things I'm looking at is pulling together objectives for the IT organization. And one of them is around diversity and inclusion. So I am super excited about getting those metrics, and I am going to be watching them I don't know if I'll get them from HR, that's the question. I have to though. I have to report on them, but that'll be the one I'll be zoning in on. Forget about outages, it's all about the women.
But also just on that point, Naomi, sometimes it's getting the data. So it's all very well looking at different levels and stuff like that, but it's kind of, there's an extra piece that goes around that, okay, so if we've got this gap between, say, AVP and VP, I mean, obviously I'm talking in banking terms, but where are people on those pathways and what perhaps needs to be done in terms of plugging skills gaps and things like that to get them to that next level? Because it's easy to put numbers around that. Okay, we need 20 more women on there, but those 20 women may be really at the early AVP stage, and they need quite a bit to kind of get up to that piece. So getting the data is great, but then it's that lens across the top around kind of what needs to be done.
It's that the pathway to promotion, and that isn't it from our group. There wasn't that clear pathway. I know within our organization, I know certainly in, say, more in the business side or fund, there definitely is sort of a career, pathway people can choose. That's not there now. It is being worked on, but within tech, so there's definite opportunity there to kind of.
But also even from your perspective, Naomi, right, is the storytelling goes with that. So for example, there isn't a traditional pathway. It's not a straight way. By telling stories and having other women in tech articulate their journey, we kind of bust the myth that there has to be this one way. Okay, here's a traditional route to get where you need to go, but actually here's lots of other different ways, that squiggly lines or non-linear lines that you can get there. So the two kind of marry up as well.
Can I add to that as well? To get scale, you've got to train your middle managers in this, so that they're sharing that with everyone, because there's a lot of things we do where we're fixing ourselves as women, whereas I think tackling that middle level to give them the training to lean in and start actively engaging in people's, and to get them past that fear, if I train them, if I upskill them, they'll go. It's to get moved, and that's that tracking and KPIs around managers really actively engaging and supporting people's careers.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else in any of the other rooms?
just to touch on that storytelling a wee bit more, we talked a little bit about sponsorship and storytelling, and I think two of the things that came out for me was with the storytelling, we have been using that quite a lot at Oliver Wyman, and we do a lot of it internally, and really it's about the scope of that storytelling. So we're running a Flex Appeal campaign at the minute, which is telling people about other people in the company who are contractually working less hours. So I work 4 days a week. I'm off on a Monday, and a lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people, once we publicized this internally, a lot of people said, wow, I didn't know that was a benefit that I could actually do. And they didn't know, oh, I could do 90%, I can do 80%, 70%. And they didn't know how to go about actually doing that. But I think for me, it's about what is the scope of that storytelling, because we're really good at doing that internally, which is great for our people. But if we were to doing that externally, then obviously that's even better. And also on the storytelling point, and a bit of an overlap with another topic we were talking about in our group, amongst other great ones that I'll let the others chat to. But in terms of sponsorship, about 2 years ago, Oliver Wyman's been doing it for a long time. And about 2 years ago, I had no idea. I was put forward for the sponsorship program. And I initially said no, because I was like, that looks like a lot of work. It was 6 modules. We had to do a project. And on top of our day job, I was like, no, that sounds great, but I don't have time for that. And once I got onto the project, after somebody convinced me, there was another storytelling aspect where other people came along and they said, I did this, it was excellent, and this is how it affected me. But that didn't happen until actually after I got onto the sponsorship program. So again, it's around how do we make sure that storytelling and that sharing of stories around the sponsorship happens before then, so that Karina, before I got that sponsorship, knew not to say no. This is going to make a difference. I knew what that would going to, how that was going to impact me, and to allow other colleagues around the firm to understand that that's available as well. So those were kind of two of the things that came out of our group, but there were many more, but I'll let the others talk to those.
But Karina, just on the Oliver Wyman stuff, I mean, you guys have been working with us for years, and we tell a lot of your stories, like, you know, Deborah and more recently Irina and stuff like that. And it does work, and it does attract people to go and find out more about the organisation. And you're quite right. You know, I mean, flexible working shouldn't really be a benefit, but if people know that that's an option in the company, of course they're going to ask for it. And without that storytelling, it wouldn't happen. So Karina, we need to tell your story. So I'll pick up on that with you afterwards. Anybody else? Anyone else want to add to anything in their rooms? You're a quiet bunch. Well, listen, I mean, hopefully you've met some other people. You've had a chance to kind of talk about some things that you could potentially do. I will follow up with you to find out if there's anything that you really want to grab hold of and run with, and hopefully catch some of the others that are just watching and see if there's anything that they're doing as well. And then hopefully we can get some benefit. We'd love, I think from myself, Sue, and Debbie's perspective, we'd love to see a company just grab hold of one piece of that report and really drive it, because, you know, if you do, we will put you everywhere. You know, and you will be the showcase, the one company that people want to work for. You know, so do think about kind of what you can do in your organisation. I know you've got your constraints, and again, kind of spoke about it with some other use. Sometimes this is off the side of the desk stuff. And I'm totally with Leanne. It should be a headcount with a paid salary that's kind of dedicated to it if companies want to take it seriously. So I will let you go. I know I'm going to see some of you at One Tech World next Friday. Do tune in. Naomi is actually one of our speakers on that, and she's talking about refinding like her career, having her kids, and kind of jumping into bigger responsibilities post that. Debbie's also at the conference speaking for Tech Talent Charter, and also a conversation with me and 2 other incredible individuals, Jacqueline de Rocos and Namali de Alwis, about the barriers, which is a great, more like loose women for tech kind of conversation. Who's also talking, giving a little bit of that presentation as well. But yeah, and then obviously Catherine, Credit Suisse, being one of our sponsors for that as well. So do check it out, and hopefully I'll see you next week. But if not, thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your passion. Right?
Bye, have a great
We'll
day.
get there in the end. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Bye.